Welcome to the Architecture Raster Design and MEP Toolset webinar. My name is Kayla Tenadori-Ocardi, and I'm the host today. I'm joined by our presenter, Sean Bryant, who will introduce himself shortly. So before we begin, a few notes. First are safe harbor statements. The presentation today is made based on our current expectations. Things can change. Purchasing decisions should not be made based upon reliance on these statements. With that, I will turn it over to Sean, who will introduce himself.
Many thanks, Kayla. So I'm Sean Bryant, and as you may be asking, who is this guy? I'm the owner and lead consultant of CAD FM Consultants over in the UK, and I'm also a fairly prolific blogger with the blog Not Just CAD being part of the CAD FM Consultants brand as well. I've done various bits of writing for Augie World, Catalyst, Redshift, and so on, and I'm a fairly well-known AutoCAD content author on LinkedIn Learning that was previously lynda.com. I've been working with AutoCAD and Revit as a consultant and trainer now for quite a few years, 32 years of AutoCAD experience, 11 years of Revit experience, and I'm also an Autodesk Expert Elite as part of the Expert Elite program, and I'm a bit of a subject matter expert for both Certiport and AMD, who make all the graphics cards. Something you may not know about me is I'm also a singer and songwriter with music on iTunes and other outlets. You can see me looking mean and moody there with one of my guitars. That was a photo shoot in London a few years back. And I'm going to be releasing a second album at some point. It's under construction when time permits, obviously, because I have webinars like this to present a lot of the time. I've also been known to sound like the Geico Gecko for those Americans out there, which will probably raise a few smiles. I didn't know what the Geico Gecko was until somebody mentioned it a little while back at Autodesk University, and when I checked it out, it was kind of fun to know. And I'm sometimes known as Ricky Gervais's stunt double as well, purely due to the fact that I look a little bit like him too. Okay, well, let's jump into the presentation now. And what we're going to do, we're going to look at the key concepts first. I'm just going to talk you through which of the tool sets we're going to be covering today, because what you get with AutoCAD, including the specialized tool sets, is you get that group of tool sets that you can see on the screen. There's 7 of them in total. Now, I'm not going to cover all 7 all in one go. We have a group of webinars phased over the next few months that will go through a number of the different tool sets so that you can experience all the different features, tools, and benefits. So the ones we're going to look at today are the architecture toolset and the MEP toolset, and also the Raster Design toolset, those 3 there, like so. And they all run off of the AutoCAD engine. So when you sign up to your AutoCAD, including specialized toolset subscription, you'll get all 7 of these, and you can work with all 7 of these toolsets. Now, the specialized toolsets, what are the key benefits there? Now, the first thing is these all run with full AutoCAD only. So if you're running AutoCAD LT, you won't have the option to utilize specialized toolsets. It's all full AutoCAD. And the reason for that primarily is because you need the full AutoCAD engine to work with the technology that the toolsets provide. So it says intelligent there on the left. You get a group of intelligent libraries of symbols, parts, detail components. And these are all industry standard and industry specific. So for example, we're looking at the architecture toolset and the MEP toolset today. You'll have libraries of symbols, parts, and details that you can use to almost automate some of your workflows with these toolsets. As it says there, you'll be faster. You'll be able to automate the creation of things like annotations, layers, and properties when you're using these libraries of symbols, parts, and details. It's also familiar. So you're working with that AutoCAD interface that you're used to. So you're still going to have the AutoCAD specific interface, but you're just going to have lots more tools in your AutoCAD using that particular specialized toolset. And it's also efficient because you're extending your workflow now across a specific discipline. So like today, architecture and MEP, and also Raster Design. Raster Design is less industry specific though, because what it allows you to work with is raster images and bring them into your AutoCAD workflows. You'll also get the regular subscription benefits. So if you sign up to AutoCAD with the specialized tool sets as part of your subscription, you're going to get the regular, excellent technical support from Autodesk. You're always going to have the up-to-date software because under subscription, you can obviously download various versions of the software. You've also got your flexible term lengths. You might only need to work with a particular tool set for 1 month, but you've still got that subscription there if you need it. And you've got the admin tools as well, where you can manage your software licenses, your seats, your usage, and also the deployment of these tool sets across your CAD team. So let's jump into some numbers now. Let's have a look at the architecture toolset. Now, one of the things I've been involved with is productivity studies for the toolsets with Autodesk. And the recent studies that we've worked on have shown particular productivity gains for the architecture toolset in this case. Now, you will notice there's a little asterisk there. That's our little disclaimer, just to say that you might not get exactly the same results that we did when we were working through the productivity studies and working out the gains the toolset gives you. So just be aware of that. We can't promise that it's going to be exactly the same, and that's based on your hardware, the user, the training of the user, etc., etc. However, looking at the bullet points there, when you're working with the architecture toolset, you're going to be able to create floor plans up to 53% faster. And the time taken to create something like an architectural elevation was reduced by about 79%. And detailing and scheduling, that really odious task that you always have on projects, can be reduced by up to 70%. Now, I'm sure that's things that you all want within your projects. And as it says there, for more details about that, you can refer to the complete study, which is called The Benefits of Using the Architecture Toolset in AutoCAD. But if you look at the numbers on the right-hand side, you can see with the architecture toolset, roughly speaking, you're going to get a 61% gain. So you'll notice there that with the architecture toolset, the hours are much less than if you were using basic AutoCAD. And that's where these toolsets come in. They allow you to work smarter, faster, and save you all that time. One of the other toolsets that we're going to look at today, again, based on the productivity studies that we've worked on, you get, roughly speaking, a 48% overall production time saving there. And what it allows you to do in raster design is you can insert and scale a raster image up to 51% faster. And I've got some videos later on in the presentation that will explain that a little bit and show you why the raster design toolset is so useful. But also managing those raster images and the properties of those raster images was reduced by up to 94% because you're using a specific toolset for a specific need rather than using the generic tools that come in basic AutoCAD. Also, vectorizing raster line entities and recognizing raster text, you can get up to a 45% time saving. And again, I'm going to talk you through a little bit of that in this presentation. Now, I just want to give you a little note there. The Raster Design Toolset is not a separate application like the other toolsets are. When you install the Raster Design Toolset, it becomes a tab in your regular AutoCAD. So you'll open up basic AutoCAD and you'll have a Raster Tools tab on your AutoCAD ribbon, and that's where all the technology sits. It's not a separate like AutoCAD, like the architecture toolset, like the MEP toolset. But again, you've got the benefits of using the Raster Design Toolset in AutoCAD that you can go and look up and read through the study. And again, our little disclaimer asterisk there, just saying that things may differ, the results may differ depending on what you're doing with the Raster Design Toolset. Last but not least, today we're going to look at the MEP toolset as well. And again, we have another productivity study again for that one. And these are some of the gains that you'll get. Now, the gains on this one are pretty impressive. It's an 85% overall productivity gain. And when you look at the basic AutoCAD 100 hours against the hours for the MEP toolset, it's quite a difference because you can set up projects up to 81% faster. You can create MEP power, electrical, HVAC plans, and the time reduced to create those, about 86% less. That's really quite an amazing statistic when you think about it. And you can reduce the time spent on detailing and creating new sheets for your MEP project as well. And again, you're saving up to 84% of your time. Now, the reason that you're saving this time will become a lot more apparent when I take you through the little videos that I've got in place in this presentation. Now, just before we start on those, I just want you to be aware that I've gone really simple with each of the videos. I don't want to get into too much depth. I just want to show you the workflows and how much easier those workflows are when you're using the tool sets. I could go into a lot of detail, but then the presentation would be a lot longer. So let's have a look at our architecture toolset first. Now, I mentioned all the gains. You can see the bullet points there are basically reiterating what we talked about a moment ago. And the overall time saving would be about 61%. But what I want you to do is just have a look at that little screenshot there I've got on the slide. The major benefit of the architecture toolset is you are working with a 3D architectural model. Now, the reason you do that is purely because 3D is easier then to generate your plans, your elevations, your details, and so on, because you're taking all of that information off of a 3D model. So what you're doing is you're transitioning from perhaps 2D in basic AutoCAD to 3D in the architecture toolset. Now, obviously that's going to take time. And what I want to show you here is some of the benefits of why it's worth investing that time into the architecture toolset. So let's jump into the first video. This is all about creating floor plans, and the time saving there is roughly 53%. Now, there's the front screen of the architecture toolset there. You can see it's AutoCAD Architecture 2021 on the title bar there. And what happens is you work in a project environment in the architecture toolset. So I've started up the architecture toolset. We've got a project open. You can see the project navigator to the left there. So let's start the video up. And what we're going to do now is there's our current project. So we've got the name, the number, the description, and again, nice and simple. You can break it down into levels. I've got roof and ground there, and then divisions might be east wing, west wing on a larger, more complex project. As you work through the project navigator, there's different tools available where you can close the current project, open up a new one, go to the content browser where you can go to the content libraries. You can synchronize projects and also set up project standards. But what you're doing with this project is you're setting up what is called your constructs. Now, your constructs are all the different parts of your architecture project. So you've got your curtain walling, your furniture fit out, wall construction, roof slabs, and so on. And then you're putting each of those elements together. So what will happen is if I jump into the wall construction drawing, you see it's all my walls, doors, and windows. And you can see how that relates to the 3D image I showed you previously. And each of these elements is what they call an MV block. So those double doors are an MV block, that tag is an MV block, and it's all part of the architecture project. So the properties there, as you can see, it's a 3D, in inverted commas, element in your architecture project. And as you can see there, it's got all these different properties that allow you to work with the design of those elements in your architecture project as well. So the benefit you have there is you're building this all up in 3D, but you're working at your ground level for your wall construction. And the whole idea is that each of these elements joins together. So there's the curtain walling. That was the glass wall that you saw in the 3D view. So if I go to the properties of that, you can see there that you can specify the spacings on the grid of the curtain walling, and you can perhaps use a different type of curtain walling. There's an entire content library available to you in the architecture toolset for that. You can see it in the tool palettes in the design tab there. So the whole idea of this particular constructs there is that you're going to come into the views, and those constructs then are utilized to generate the views that you want in your project. So you can see that's been broken down into a 3D view, details, elevations, and sections. So there's my ground floor GA. So you can see now that I've got some revision bubbles there, some text, I've got the title of that particular view in there, I've got a section line going through the middle, and the whole idea is my views are all generated from that particular ground floor GA. So my elevations might come off of that. And if I hover over each one and select it, can you see they highlight just like an XREF? And it's actually utilizing external reference technology in AutoCAD and giving you all of those views joined together using common points. And then what will happen next is you then generate your sheets, and this is based off of the sheet set manager technology in AutoCAD. And you can see now that I've generated some sheet categories there. So we've got our plans, for example. If I open that up, I use a standard sheet template and I just drag my view from the view tab into my sheet like so, and it gives me a viewport, I can specify the scale of that viewport, and I'm generating my sheets there just to communicate my design intent. So when I zoom in, there's my ground floor GA, and you can see there that it's P100, Plan 100, I've called it there. But the benefit you have of all of this information is that you're working from that initial 3D model all the way out to your sheets so that you can then communicate that architectural design quickly and easily. Now we're jumping again into the 3D part, as you can see there, of our architecture toolset. And what we're going to look at now is generating some architectural elevations. Now you'll notice the time saving, approximately 79%. Now, if you're working in basic AutoCAD and using 2D, for example, for an architectural project, you're going to have to generate all of those elevations by creating construction lines off of a plan view or perhaps a different view in the model space. If you're working in 3D with your architectural model in the architecture toolset like you are here, you don't need to worry about that. You can generate your elevations very quickly, and there's tools available in the architecture toolset to do that. So let's run the video and we'll jump into our project again like we did in the previous video. So you can see there that I'm in the project, and again I've got the tabs, there's the levels there, roof and ground, and the divisions. I've got my constructs as per the previous video as well. So the whole idea here is we want to start thinking about generating some elevations from our 3D model. So we've got our furniture fit out, you can see it there. Everything's in the model as per the previous video. We've got our walls, our doors. And if I hover over those, did you see there that you got the properties of all of that information as well? So what we want to think about is how do we generate an elevation? How does that work? Well, the trick is to start creating elevation views from our 3D model. And the trick there is you're working in obviously 3D rather than 2D. So if I go to the Home tab now, you'll notice if I come across in the Architecture toolset, I've got a section and elevation panel. And I can generate things like elevation lines, section lines, and so on. And the whole idea is I can create a different view that is my elevations and sections view. So I've created a category there, and you can see I've got some elevations in there, and I've also got a ground floor section in there. So if I open up that ground floor information, if I jump into something like, say, one of the elevations, each one of those will go to a specific view in a separate DWG file. So there's my east elevation, and that's been generated off of the 3D model. And what will happen is if I start zooming and panning a little bit, you'll recognize all of those views from the 3D view we've just seen. So there's my section based on that section line we saw in that plan GA that we looked at earlier. And it's all based on this view here. So you can see the section line, you can see the blue elevation lines there, and each one of those arrows is just a block with specific information pointing to each side of the building in the 3D model. And what I'm doing there is creating an elevation line, and I would then create it and then place it in the DWG file. So once I've placed the elevation line, it will then prompt me to place the elevation view, as you can see there in the DWG. And it's really quick and easy. That's the benefit. You're not having to create loads of construction lines to develop these things. And then again, we go into sheets, and if I jump into the elevations here, you can see there's the elevations there, there's the E100 sheet. If I double click on that, there's my sheet using my template. There's my viewports with each of the elevations that I've dragged from the Views tab. And it's that quick and easy. And what I love about the Architecture toolset is it takes away all of that almost like you're on the drawing board again, well, for those of you that remember the drawing board, obviously. But the whole idea is that it's automating that process. It's saving you time, which is where that 79% time saving comes from. Last but not least, with the architecture toolset, we're going to do a little window schedule, and the time savings on this approximately are 70%. So I'm just going to run the video very quickly, and we're going to jump into the project again. As you can see, we're utilizing that project navigator all the time to navigate all the different views, sheets, and constructs. So I'm going to go into the ground floor GA in the views. Now, this is where I would normally place a schedule. You might not, you might place it somewhere differently. But what I want to do is generate a very simple window schedule using the Annotate tab on the ribbon. And you'll notice we've got a scheduling panel there. So I go to Window Schedule. And again, the properties pops up because I've got a properties of windows, etc. coming up. Now, the benefit is it's external reference based. So I'm selecting all of that wall. The architecture toolset now is going, right, how many windows are in there? And can you see there's a little red box? it's there already. It's generated the schedule for me. All I've got to do is specify where it goes and what space it's going to occupy. So on that second click, there's my window schedule. And this is the benefit of the content library in the architecture toolset and those MV blocks that I mentioned for the doors, the windows, the tags, etc. So all of that information is in there, but when I click there, you'll notice I cannot click on an individual window. The only way I can do that to change the window or the door type is to actually go into the construct. So if I wanted to change a particular window type, I'd have to go back into the construct, you'll notice, and there's my properties of that particular window. You can see the style there just underneath the little window graphic. So if I wanted to make changes, I do that in the constructs, and then the way that I extrapolate the information is in the views. I then drag those views onto sheets to obviously demonstrate and communicate my design intent. Now, what will happen is I need to save a drawing where I've made changes. Otherwise, things like the sheets will not show the window schedule. And the reason that that's not showing at the moment is because I haven't saved the view that I put the window schedule in. So if I go back to the ground floor GA and I make sure that I save that, because it's based on external reference XREF technology, what will happen now is because I've saved that, when I jump back into the sheet, I'll get the usual Autodesk prompt and XREF was modified. I can use the XREF compare if I want to. I'm not going to, but I just reload that XREF up, and as if by magic, my window schedule appears on my sheet, ready to go out of the door for obviously people to work out what window types are in that particular drawing. So hopefully you can see there how the architecture toolset workflow gives you that way to work with a project. It's all project based. You're working in 3D, so generating your views is much, much quicker. And then any detailing or sheets that you might want to create are so much quicker as well, because like the window schedule there, it's really quick and easy to get that information onto one of your drawings. We're now going to move on to the Raster Design Toolset. Now, I did mention that this runs in your regular basic AutoCAD. So if you look at the graphic there, you can see that I've got it's actually a JPEG there, that image there at the moment, but I'm in regular AutoCAD and I'm in the Raster Tools tab, you'll notice in the graphic there, and there's all the Raster Design tools ready to go. Now, insertion and scaling of raster images, 51% faster. Time taken to manage and view was reduced by 94%. Vectorizing raster line entities and raster text, up to a 45% time saving. So overall, about a 48% time saving. And again, I'm going to disclaim that and say it might be different when you do it. So I've been working on a project where I needed to take a raster image, in this case, Her Majesty's Land Registry planning drawing, into an AutoCAD drawing to work for a specific client that I've been working with recently. So let's have a look at how I inserted and scaled the raster image into a regular DWG file first. So I'm just running the video there. I'm making sure that my raster image comes in on its own layer, first of all. Always a good bit of CAD practice to get into. I then jump into the Raster Tools tab in the AutoCAD ribbon. So the first thing I need to think about is, how do I get this image into my drawing? Well, you've got options again in AutoCAD Raster Design, as you can see there. So things like your insertion point, you might have a default insertion point, a default scale, etc. Then we go and look for our JPEG file. So there it is there. There's a support for many, many files. I'm using a JPEG, but if I jump down here, there's lots and lots of image files that are supported, as you can see, plenty. Now, the project itself, it's got an address there. It's basically a planning land registry drawing that I'm working with, and I'm setting it for the insertion dialog box. That's my preference, but you can work with different insert options. So when I click on open now, you can see that it's trying to insert the JPEG on the right. That's the white area. I want to work with the image file. I specify my insertion point. I might want to modify the image units, which in this case I would, because I'm working in metric millimeters. I apply that. There's the insertion there. It's going in at 0, 0 with a rotation of 0 and a scale of 1 to 1. I can also pick an insertion point there. I can also select a different color if I want to. I'm using the by layer option, so it's going onto that raster image layer. So when I apply that and okay that, my image is then inserted into the drawing file. It's that quick and easy. So I've now got a JPEG file in my DWG file, but the benefit I've got there with the tools in the Raster Design Toolset is it allows me to manipulate them a little bit more. You can see the image tab there on the ribbon. I can switch the image off and on if I want to. I might not need it there at all times, but it's always going to be there as a point of reference as an inserted raster image. And I can update things like the contrast, the fade, and the brightness if I want to. As you can see there, when I tweak the brightness, it gets darker and lighter and so on. So the tools are there to save you time so that if you've got a specific coordinate where you want your JPEG to come in at, all the tools are there to allow you to work with that quicker and easier as against the basic AutoCAD. So how do we manage and view these raster images? Well, one of the things that you need to have with this raster image in your DWG file is it needs to be bitonal. Hence, I've put in brackets there bitonal. It needs to be just two colors. And this will save you a huge amount of time when you're working with the raster tools in the Raster Design Toolset, because they're all biased towards working with bitonal images. But you need to know how to make that JPEG image bitonal first of all. How do you do that? Well, let's run the video and have a quick look at that. This is a big time saving. This will save you a huge amount of time when you're working in the Raster Design Toolset. So I'm going to go to the Home tab and into the Layer Properties. And you can see there we've got the raster image and it's white at the moment. As you can see, I can change the color of that if I want to. It's entirely up to you. I tend to leave it on a white color on a dark background, purely because when I do make this bitonal, it's then black and white and it's easy to see on the dark background, the standard background in AutoCAD. So I'm going to go to cleanup and you'll see why, when I invert it, why I've made it white. Because that way the white shows up on the dark. If that's a different color, say a dark blue, it would be difficult to see. I'm then going to do a histogram of the whole image. So there's various tools here. I can clip a region of the JPEG. I'm going to use the whole image. And then when I'm histogramming this, you can see there's lots and lots of different settings that I can fool around with and make changes to. And I'm just going to jump into one of them, which is the threshold setting. That's the one that's really important. And you can see there that I can use the slider bar to move that around. So what it does is it converts a non-bitonal image to a bitonal image. That's what the threshold setting is all about. So in this particular case, I'm coming down to a value in the region of about 50, 60 out of the 255 there. It will change depending on what colors you're using. But now I've done that, can you see what I've done? I've made that just black and white. So if I zoom in on it and have a look now, the information is still raster image, but it's now all just two colors, which allows the Raster Design Toolset to come into its own. Because what I can start thinking about now is converting information within the JPEG image into vector-based information, which then works in the DWG file. So the next video is all about how we convert those raster line entities and raster text. So we've got our histogram image there where we've been through and histogrammed it and made the changes. And what I'm going to do now is start looking at some of the JPEG information I've got. So it's an HM land registry drawing that I'm working with that was originally a JPEG image. And what I want to do is jump into that and make the changes accordingly. So the idea is that when I'm running the video here, I'm going to come into the Home tab and go into the Layer Properties again. And what I want to show you is I've created some new layers. You've got a text layer and a lines layer. Now, the reason I've done that is when I start converting this JPEG information, the raster information, to vector information for use with AutoCAD and the DWG, you want it to be on a specific layer. So I'm going to zoom in on the HM land registry text there. And as you can see, it's a bit grainy, bit bumpy where we've done the histogram setting with the threshold. And I've switched on raster snap there in the raster tools. And what I'm doing now is I'm generating an angle and an area that I want to check for text using the OCR tools. As soon as I select that, you'll see that AutoCAD in the Raster Design Toolset has picked up on that using OCR, and it's telling me now I can have annotative or standard text. I can go into the setup, I can pick up specific information, selection shapes, what AutoCAD output do I want, and when I OK that, it comes in on an AutoCAD layer as AutoCAD text. So I come out of the OCR command and that is now multi-line text. It's that quick and easy. I can edit it. I can change the font, I can make it bold, italic, underline, etc. It's all multi-line text. Now that's just one piece of text out of the JPEG. Obviously you would go in and edit all of that. Going on to the lines layer now, and I'm going to zoom in on the area I'm working on, which is that property there with the little boundary shown on it. And what I want to do there is I want to perhaps start creating the outline of that house from the JPEG image. So I've got raster snap there, again, make sure it's on, and I can do things like create polyline followers, and I can create what they call primitives as well. So if I select that point there, watch what happens. Can you see the blue polyline? It kind of tries to create a polyline from the image information, the JPEG image information. So that's what these followers do and allow you to kind of click on one element in the JPEG and it will try and create something. But if I just click there, notice it's creating lines for me very quickly and easily, like so. They're not perfect. And the issue you have there is it does depend on the quality of the JPEG image that you've got. But as you can see, I turned those to lines. I've just done an undo there. If I wanted to create them as a polyline instead, I pick a point on the JPEG, and as you can see, it's starting to create a polyline for me as I follow that around. And then what I'll do, I'll click on a few other points, press enter to finish, and what will happen is that is now a polyline. And if I select it, you can see it's an AutoCAD polyline with the relevant grips and so on. And that's the major benefit of the Raster Design Toolset. You can convert these entities really quickly and easily, so long as you know which workflow to use. Now, the MEP toolset, which is the last one we're going to cover today, again, big time savings in this one, up to 85% time savings. And the reason for that is if you look at the graphic I've got on the slide there, do you recognize that project navigator? You should recognize some of the architectural information as well, because you can utilize the project that you had in the architecture toolset. So all of your architectural information is still in the project. You're then adding your MEP information. So setting up the projects is, as you can see, 81% faster because you're utilizing existing project information. You've also got the time taken to create things like MEP plans, up to 86% time saving. And detailing and sheets again, you're reducing that by up to 84%. Again, in a similar way to the architecture toolset, you're working on a project in a project environment. So let's have a look at how we would set up a project in the MEP toolset, and you'll see why there's a time saving there of up to 81%. So I'm just going to run the video there. We're in the project navigator again. It's the same project that we had in the architecture toolset. So what you're doing here is you're just working with the same project information. So you go into your constructs now, and you might want to create a new category. So the new category there might be something like MEP or MEP services. And what you're doing there is if you need some new constructs as part of your MEP project in the MEP toolset, you can add those to the same project. The benefit you've got here with your workflows is you're now allowing to have a multidisciplinary workflow. You've got your architectural discipline, you've got your MEP discipline, and all of the information, the views, the sheets can be categorized in the project navigator like I'm showing you there. So it's going to save you a huge amount of time because one, you're utilizing the same project information, but secondly, you're able to categorize your MEP information as against the architecture information. It's really quick and easy to do. And the benefit you have there is it's all based on the same project structure. So as you can see, you've got your elevations, your 3D view, but then you might have MEP services views and constructs as per the project navigator on the screen. Very quick and easy to do. And that's where that 81% time saving comes from. Now, let's have a little look at MEP power, electrical and HVAC plans. Now, I'm not going to go into everything here because it's a very, very large product, the MEP toolset. I'm just going to show you a really simple little bit of HVAC technology that we're going to drop into this particular little architectural project that we're utilizing, that we're reusing. So if I run the video, again, we're in the same project. So the project navigator is there. I leave the project navigator open all the time when I'm working in these tool sets. It's quick and easy to use. You can, if you want to, dock it and auto hide it and so on, like you can with any other palette as well. So all of the information is there. You've got your sheets, you've got your MEP services sheets and so on. So that's all up and running. So I'm just going to jump into the wall construction construct. I'm not going to worry about creating anything new or start developing lots of new drawings and things. I'm going to utilize the existing information. I'm just going to turn off snap and grid. And then what I'm going to do, using the tool palettes there for HVAC, I'm going to put some diffusers in at a certain elevation. Now, this is the benefit of the tool set here, because all of these diffusers here are what they call MV parts. They're all 3D parts, and I can specify a particular industry standard. So I've gone in there, I've just picked a diffuser with a certain neck size, certain duct size, and so on, and then I specify the rotation of it and I drop it in, and it's at an elevation there of 2,500, which is 2.5 meters in a metric environment. So there's my diffuser there. It's kind of floating in space. What you've got to imagine here is we've got all our ceiling tiles in place and we're spacing our diffusers in our MEP project. And I'm just adding some ducting now, and it's gone, hang on a minute, due to the size and the layout here, you will need an elbow because I'm turning a corner. And it actually tells me what I need out of those MV parts. And I'm just dropping that down at 90 degrees and I'll press enter there. So I've popped a bit of ducting coming off of that diffuser there. Now, the other benefit I've got is I've still got my basic modify tools, things like move, copy, rotate. I've also got AEC modify tools. So I can do an array if I wanted to. I'm just going to do a quick copy. I'm just going to pick a point on the diffuser and drop a couple of other diffusers. I'm not going to worry about the distances between them. Obviously, if I was working on a proper project, I'd worry about distances and spacing. But because they're MV parts, I can now say, right, I want to add a bit of flex duct coming off of that diffuser and join the main ducting there. Again, it's telling me that I need to add a fitting there. I need to obviously take that flex duct and join the main ducting, and it does it for me. It's really quick and easy. I don't have to draw any of that. It knows what I'm doing. So what I'll do there, I'll press enter, go and select the other one there. There you go, hover over it again, add another bit of flex duct. And because these MV parts have that intelligence there, I've now dropped those in. Now, here's the clever bit. If I now just come out of that command and do a little bit of a 3D orbit, you'll notice now that that's floating at roughly ceiling level. Imagine you've got the tiles there and so on. And as I bring that in, you can see all of my architectural information as well. So you're now viewing that MEP information in context. So if you had a ceiling in there, you would see that those diffusers come through the ceiling, the ducting goes above the ceiling. I've just changed the visual style there to realistic to give you an idea. So you can see the ducting is all metallic. You can see the brickwork, the doors, and so on. So you can see how quick and easy it is to generate an HVAC plan, and you can do the same with power, you can do the same with electrical in the MEP toolset as well. And all of those tools are there to allow you to work with those MV parts in the MEP toolset. Last but not least, we'll jump into detailing and sheets in a similar way that we did with the architecture toolset earlier. So you can see there's the wall construction construct that we worked in previously, where I dropped in the diffusers and the ducting. So what we want to think about now is how do we generate a sheet there that will allow us to work with our MEP information, to communicate our MEP information. So we're going to make sure that we go into views, and as you can see, we've got MEP services there. So I'm going to generate a new view drawing. I'm going to use the general category. So I'll give it a name like so, and we maybe call that 00 for ground floor, and it will be the ground floor HVAC drawing perhaps. I'm not going to worry too much about a specific name because obviously that's fairly subjective. And then we're going to apply to only have the elements of the building on the ground floor to show this. So we're going to have the curtain walling, furniture fit out, and the wall construction. We don't want the roof in the way because we won't be able to see it. So I'm going to click on finish there, and that's now created a new 00 ground floor HVAC view there, as you can see. And when I double click on that and open it up, it opens up a separate DWG file. So we've created there a new DWG file with the information we want to show. And that information now can go into a sheet. So again, we're working with the same project structure. We're now adding our MEP information to that project structure. So you'll recognize that dialog box if you use sheet sets in basic AutoCAD. I'm putting in the sheet number, the sheet title, you've got the folder path, and it's utilizing a standard template that I've utilized for this particular project. I'll click on OK, and it will now open that up in the drawing editor. So now I've got my sheet drawing open, and if I zoom in, you can see it's ground floor HVAC, HVAC 001, that's what we just called it. And all I've got to do now is jump into my views tab in the project navigator. So if I jump in there, there's my view that we created earlier, drag and drop, and we'll place that and just release the left-hand mouse button. It's a bit small, so I'll just right-click there to change the scale a little bit. And there's our viewport scale updated, and there's the information. Double-click inside the viewport, I'll switch off the grid and the snap. Double-click outside the viewport to deactivate it. And there is our HVAC sheet. Now you can do that with details as well, same as you can in the architecture toolset. You can create detailed drawings as well as plans and GAs. But the benefit, like I said, is you're working with existing information in a project, and you're working with the MEP workflow in a project, whereas somebody else might be working with architectural information in a project, but you're all working with the same project. And it allows you to automate your workflows and work much, much smarter and much, much faster. What I'd also like to bring up just very briefly is that all AutoCAD toolsets offer an API, an application programming interface, as does the basic AutoCAD. Now, what you'll find here is this is a little bit more specific because you're working with specific tool sets, but you can basically use user programming to automate any tedious, time-consuming tasks. Things like counting doors and windows, for example, things like that. There's user programming out there to develop apps that will benefit the AutoCAD toolset users in your team. So you can utilize the tools in the API to generate your own routines and workflows, or you can go to the Autodesk App Store. And you can use apps there in the App Store with each of the tool sets, but just make sure, obviously, they run in your specific tool set. You'll notice in that little middle graphic there in the App Store, if you look at the left there where it says AutoCAD, you've got analysis and simulation, blocks, building design, building MEP, and so on. Also, you've got the search apps there, so you can search apps for, let's say, architecture or MEP and so on that way too. So there's lots of different apps out there that you might be able to utilize in your tool sets as well. And those time-saving apps that are provided by third-party developers in the App Store. Who's to say that you might develop a small app and you could potentially generate a revenue stream on the App Store from it? It doesn't have to cost the earth, and that little app might generate a little bit of revenue for you if it's unique and works well with your specific toolset. I'm just going to jump into the overall time savings now. Now, this is based on this example project that I've gone through in the videos, and based on the slides that you saw right at the beginning with the hours and the time savings. So if you look at these numbers, I've put it into a table, and what I find is if I tabulate something, I can see the value of it. So the architecture toolset, regular AutoCAD, it would take me 1,000 hours, but if I'm using the specialized toolset, the architecture toolset, it will only take me 390 hours. Raster Design Toolset, 10 hours to do the work, but if I'm using the Raster Design Toolset, 5.2 hours to do the work. MEP Toolset, 100 hours to do the work in regular AutoCAD. If I did that, utilizing that project structure, utilizing all of the MV parts, takes that 100 hours down to 15 hours. So overall, if you did this particular project and worked through what I've just shown you, roughly speaking, obviously I've generalized a lot, the project would take in the region of 1,110 hours. If you use the tool sets though, it's going to take it down to 410.2 hours. Now again, we've got the little asterisk disclaimer there, and that's all compared to basic AutoCAD, but be aware that your results might differ depending on what you're doing, depending on what hardware you're using, depending on your project complexity, etc. So just be aware of that. I know AU is long gone, and the insanity that is AU has long gone too. I really missed being in Vegas with everybody. It was a very surreal experience, AU 2020, what with it being virtual, and I think the Zoom call fatigue that I got replicated the fatigue I used to get in Vegas running from classroom to classroom. But I did have a class on the AU 2020 website. It was a pre-recorded on-demand video, like all the classes were, and it was AS 463447, understanding the new AutoCAD, one AutoCAD with the 7 tool sets. So if you want to go and check out my class, it's still up there on the AU website if you do want to go and have a look at the video and check it out. And also there's some links in there to my blog where a little while back when the subscriptions of AutoCAD came out and the specialized tool sets came out, there's some blog posts about them that might give you some extra information that I haven't talked about today. I'd like to say thank you for your time today, and based on current world circumstances, what I'd also like to get out there is please be safe. Take care and look after others as well as yourselves. And also bear in mind that we're all going through this, so we kind of need to all be a bit kinder to each other as well at the moment. So thank you so much for your time. I'll hand you over now to the Q&A with Kayla, and we'll see whether we've got some time for questions.
Terrific. Thank you, Sean. A lot of great conversation happening. Everyone was very excited about this presentation. And I did go ahead and add in the chat a link to that class on Autodesk University. That's free for everyone to check out too to get started in the tool sets a bit more. So thank you. So we had a question come through that I thought was pretty interesting, Sean, since you're the expert in both Revit and AutoCAD and talking about utilizing the two together. So they asked for those of us that have the AEC collection, which includes the architecture toolset and Revit, when do we use which one? And they've mentioned that they know Revit is a bit better for rendering and do they exchange information drawings?
Yes, you can. With the architecture toolset, obviously you're working in 3D and you can take your 3D DWG files over into Revit projects, the RVT file format. Again, one of the things here is it's a very, very subjective topic because you've got a lot of standards that you need to follow up with, depending, it might be American standards, UK standards, European standards, and so on. But also as well, you've got to think about how that data translates, the information behind the MV blocks in the architecture toolset, how do they translate into families in Revit and so on. And again, it's very subjective because there's lots of different ways of, one, transferring the information, but then secondly, do I start a new project in Revit? Do I start a new project in the architecture toolset? Again, very subjective. I've worked with both. I've worked with organizations in industry that use both as well. And I'll be perfectly honest, every single client I've worked with has done it differently. There are so many, to use a phrase, different ways to skin a cat with Autodesk software. And it's a very old English phrase. I apologize if it sounds a bit strange. But the idea is that you've got the information there. So if you've already got an established project, let's say in the architecture toolset, I would stay in the architecture toolset for as long as you can, because the transfer of information will be easier. Then, if you do need to move into Revit, you need to obviously build up a transfer of information standard to make sure that information goes into Revit correctly, things like coordinates, parts, families, etc. And then you need to then standardize in Revit and make sure that the standards in Revit apply back and are kind of reverse retrofitted to the standards you had in the architecture toolset. You might go the other way. You might come out of Revit and go into the architecture toolset as well. It does depend. It's very horses for courses. It's very subjective.
Thank you, Sean. Someone asked if they'll be getting this presentation as a recording, and you will. All right. Someone had a question about your favorite blocks within the architectural toolset.
I love all of them. I just love, in the architecture toolset, having worked in just basic AutoCAD for many, many years, I worked within an organization quite a long time ago now, and I was exposed to the MV blocks within the architecture toolset. And I suddenly realized that I had this huge content library of lots of regular bits of information like desks, chairs, and so on. Now, my background is facilities management, so I was forever creating office layouts and building layouts and hotel room layouts and things like that. So the content library that you get with these tool sets, especially with things like the architecture toolset, the MEP toolset, are fantastic because one, they're industry specific, and two, they're all just there. And you can just jump in, go into the content library at any time and drag and drop any of these bits of content into your project. So desks, chairs, beds, bedside tables, all that kind of thing is in there. And it just saves you having to create all of that extra detail. Now, obviously, they're not specific chairs. They're not, I mean, you could bring Herman Miller chairs in if you wanted to. Herman Miller, on their website, for example, you can download all of the 3D models and bring them in. But the idea is that you've already got an entire set of them in the tool set already. So I'd say all of the MV blocks in the architecture toolset are my favorite because they just save me so much time when I'm working on a project.
Terrific, Sean. Similar question actually on the Raster Design Toolset, if you have a favorite project or a time when it really helped you expedite the process.
I can safely say the project I've just shown you for the Raster Design Toolset, I was working on a planning application for a client. And what you have to do in the UK is apply to the HM Land Registry to get that JPEG file. But the problem is that particular file is only available in PDF or JPEG. So there's no actual physical DWG with the vectorized information on it. So the benefit I had there with the Raster Design Toolset was I was able to put that JPEG into a DWG file, use the tools available, doing the invert and the histogram, and then I was able to start vectorizing the information that I needed. Now, obviously, it's not going to save you a huge amount of time. It's not going to do it literally with, like, you know, a press of the enter key. But the benefit you have there is you can vectorize any information in a raster image. So what that means is any JPEG that you bring in, you can vectorize it and tweak it accordingly in AutoCAD because it's all vectorized information. It's all things you can convert it all to things like multi-line text, polylines, lines, arcs, circles, etc.
Great, thank you, Sean. We had a question about, can you do simulations like daylighting in AutoCAD architecture?
Yes, you can. You can add the lighting. You can use the internet mapping service is the one I'm trying to think of. So like in regular AutoCAD, you can utilize the internet mapping service. You can add lighting. You can add different, obviously, materials as well. You've still got the materials browser available in the architecture toolset as well. You'll notice when I jumped into the realistic visual style, when we were looking at the MEP side of things there, when I was putting that into a 3D view and orbiting it round, you saw that you had the brick and the wood on the doors. So you can do that. You can use the lighting. You can do, to a point, shadow studies and so on as well.
Great, thank you. Someone asked about, do you make use of the 2D detail creator in AutoCAD architecture, and can more content be added?
Yes, it can. The idea there is the content library itself is the standard thing that kind of comes with the architecture toolset. There is nothing to stop you generating your own MV blocks to work within the architecture toolset as well. And also from a 2D perspective with the detailing, like you've mentioned, yes, you can create your own as well.
On a similar note, someone wanted to know about taking old blocks that they've already created and bringing them in.
Yeah, you could do that. As long as it's all DWG format, yes, it can be done. If it was in a different file format, that's when it starts to get a bit complicated.
All right, well, I think that's all the questions that we had for today. So thank you, Sean.
You are more than welcome. Thank you for inviting me along to speak about them. It's great.